Welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'll just be doing a quick update on what I'm up to and working on. So in the past few days I've just been working on these switch blocks. So this is the original 1972 switch block. So this is made for the old throttle that used to be in the handlebars, instead of the more modern where the throttle and cable are mounted in the switch block itself, with a cable coming out of the switch block, whereas on the 1972 the cable ran in the handlebars and came out at the bottom here. So since I'm not using handlebars from the 72, I'm using them from the later 77, which does not use this system. I need to find a new switch block, but I also want to keep the functionality of the headlights here with the off, low beams and high beams, which I found in the 6V CT110, which comes with the built-in throttle whilst also being aluminium and also having a nice kill switch on the top. So I've just ordered that and it should be arriving, and you'll probably see it in the next update. I've also worked on the other side, which you'll see later in the video. The front side is currently not on the bike, but you'll see that later. These are also the Chinese sort of clone indicators. If I can get a focus on that. So the mounting on these is slightly undersized, so you just have to drill it out to, I think it's 10mm, and then they just fit straight on. And then of course you can just round the cables through the handlebars and they just come out here, and they'll be worked on later to be mounted into the headlight dome. So I've also gotten a 3-position switch which is mounted onto here, which you probably saw in the last update. So that's all put together, and as you can see it mounts nicely underneath the downcomer. Fortunately this downcomer, not sure if you can see, but the holes are slightly off, so they have to be re-drilled. Unfortunately that's not due to the switch, just a defect. I guess it might be a difference between the CT110 and the CT90. Of course this plastic is from the 110, as the 90s are pretty hard to find plastic for since they're so old. As you can see, I had to do a bit of first time welding. I think it came out pretty nice. It's not as visible in person as it is on camera here. I've also got the fuel tank temporarily installed, that's why the bolts are all loose. The center stand is painted and temporarily installed. I've been thinking of replacing the springs. I'm looking at replacing pretty much all the bolts on the motorcycle because they're all just rusted and they don't look very nice. I believe this is the luggage rack from the 1977 model. It fits quite nicely. The 72 is quite rusted. This one's got a bit of rust on it, but it's nowhere near as bad. And then after a few hours polishing this up, it looks really nice. Probably looks even better on camera than it is in person. Then underneath we have these chrome pieces. They've been painted on the later 110 model, so they might be quite hard to find if yours are quite rusted. These were a bit rusted, but luckily they came out quite nice after a bit of work. This is the suspension. You might notice it's from the CT110. I temporarily got it on here as I test out the new suspension on the 110. I'll do an update on that hopefully. Then of course you can see the wheels and hub. This brake panel is what it's called. The big part. This is from a 110. It used to be black, but I've stripped the paint off and you can hardly even tell that it's not a CT90 part. You can have a nice look at these spokes here. And then the rim, it used to have a bit of surface rust on it, but of course I've just given it a long time shining up. Of course they rust quite fast, so you have to do like monthly scrubbing on them to keep them shiny, which is a pain. So I've ordered a bunch of components from Honda, including these retaining pieces here, adjustment knobs or whatever they're called, as this one's broken. And the ones from so these are the 1977 parts here. The ones from the 72 are quite ugly, so I didn't want to use them. And then this is a piece I 3D printed, as the knobs from Honda are actually quite expensive and I didn't feel like paying so much for them when I could just 3D print them at home here. And then on the rear light holder, this one's from the 1977. As you can see, the holes don't line up, but I've drilled a new one here, and with the normal bolts it actually lines up. In terms of cabling, I'm still thinking about the original where you route it underneath the wheel well, or doing something like the CT110s where the cable comes down the outside here and then through the back. I'm thinking through the wheel well will be much nicer and original, but the cable on the outside makes it much easier to keep the cable down and clean from all the dud and muck that gets from the tyre. So that will be figured out later. Then moving back to the front just quickly. So I like the mechanism on the CT90 where you just flip this handle up and then you can quite easily store the handlebars. So there was a lot of parts that were rusted on this, so this is a combination of the 1977 and 1972 parts. And then of course the swing arm is from the 1977, as the 72, whilst I was getting it ready for painting and stripping it, the tool I was using just went straight through, so it was just rusted all the way through. So luckily I have the 1977 here, and of course I checked that for rust. And then I also used a rust converter and absolutely covered the inside with it, so that hopefully there won't be any internal rusting until many years from now. You can probably see the rust converter still leaking out there. So if you've got a older motorcycle, you'll definitely want to throw some kind of rust preventer or coating in there, because they will rust, because the internal part, they have these groove holes and they just fill up with water as soon as you get any water in them, and they just rust from the inside out. So definitely look at doing that if you got one of these. And then of course the holders are from the 1977 and I think a mix of the 72. Okay, I think that's it for this, and now I'll move on to some other stuff. Okay, so here we have the other side switch block. So I'll be keeping these, but they were all seized. So this is the mechanism to control the headlight housing. I'm looking at redesigning these, and already have a design made. So you can see the original headlight component had a lot of contacts because it was a quite dumb motorcycle. We didn't have all the modern electronics of the 1981 CT110. I believe uses a much simpler design, and there's only 3 contacts on the headlight housing. Yeah. So for mine, this is just going to be a dumb 3 position, off, on, and then both lights. And that's just going to work for both, because the turn signal is going to be a on, off, on, and then of course you've got your sides. And then over here I've got this UPS board. This is the Pico 120. Unfortunately these are extremely hard to find, as they've been discontinued in I think 2015. So I got one of the last ones, but I'm working on it. I was working on a design to try and replace this, but unfortunately I'm not an electrical engineer, and charging a battery is just too much. There is the Pico 100, which has a 15 volt minimum to charge the battery, whereas this has I think 13 volt minimum. Once I get the alternator and see what the voltage is, I can see if I can recommend the Pico 100, which is still being manufactured, as a replacement. I believe it's the same dimensions and same pins. And then of course there's the headlight housing, exactly same colour, same paint as the frame. Then I've got the original Speedo. The glass on this was all bad, so I had to take it apart and clean the glass, but unfortunately I'm not able to put it back together. So instead I've gotten one of the 110 Speedos. I believe it's this one at the end. It won't be original, but I do like the 110s more, and the bulbs are much easier. And then I've got the tachometer, probably saw in the last update. So this is servo controlled, whereas Honda usually does a mechanical from the engine, but unfortunately the Chinese engines don't have a mechanical tachometer output, so I have to drive it electronically. I did buy a bunch of motors to drive it electronically through the manual, so I didn't have to take it apart, but unfortunately I was looking at a lot of power just to run the tachometer, so instead I'm just going to use an Arduino, which is in here, and then of course that's just going to run it, and it's just going to set power. Okay, I think that's it for here, and of course I'm just testing out some dashboard lights. Still haven't found really good ones, but I'll show you some nice ones that I'm currently using. So these are the LEDs that go in the speedo and tachometer. These are really nice. They're not as bright as I want, but they are nice warm white, and they have a nice diffusion part on them, as you can see there. I've been looking, I think I bought these on AliExpress. I've been looking to buy some more of them, but they're quite hard to find. I've only been able to find them in amber for turn signals. If you see them, maybe just drop a link in the comment if you come across any of these. I apologise for the echo in this shot. So here's the front parts. So this is sort of a test paint I've done, but this grey colour is way too dark. So I bought in some lighter grey to repaint these, or buy some new ones and paint them. Unfortunately I've already painted the little pieces here. I'm not sure what these are made of, but both sets on the CT90s were, they had these big pits in them, so I had to put some body filler in and then repaint them. I'm looking at buying some new chrome ones instead of trying to fix these up. And of course you have the front wheel and the engine guard. And then these are the Chinese suspension. Thinking back now, I probably should have just bought some CT110 ones from Honda. They weren't actually that more expensive than these. I think this was $100 for a set. I think it's something like $200 for the genuine ones, and you get two genuines. When I originally read it, I thought that was per suspension fork, but it is for both. So you're better off just buying genuine Honda ones, because they are quite a hassle, and I don't think they're any better than the CT1 suspension. And done a bit of work on this, cleaning it up. I believe this is from the 72. I don't think the 77 came with a engine guard. Then I have the new brakes on, and then I've put in the new bearings. So all the wheels have been re-bearing, and they've had new rubber put in them, so they should last for another 50 years, or however old this bike is. And then of course I've got the nice road tyres on, so hopefully to give me a little bit more speed than the knobby tyres I put on the CT110, which I might do a little bit of talking about. So here's the CT110, which I've done a video about. It's a Chinese engine. It's been running amazingly, better than the old stock engine. I guess the gears are a little bit jumpy when you first get it, but they've been getting much better over time. And the highest speed I've gotten up to is 100 kilometers an hour, which was a bit downhill with a nice tailwind, so you can get quite fast, especially on these thick knobby tyres. I reckon if you had some like the CT90, you could probably get a few more kilometers per hour out of it. So you can see the suspension I'm testing for the CT90 on the back here. So this has been on here for about 3 months, I think, and you can probably see that there's already rust coming through the chrome, so I don't think they've done the best chroming on these. And then some other improvements. I've gotten this halogen bulb on the front here. I think this is a 45 watt. It definitely does a lot more output than the stock bulb. But I think it just destroys the battery. I don't think there's any battery power left in this one, so it has to be recharged manually. If you can find a 35, I think it's 35/35 halogen or 25/35 halogen, I think that would be perfect to go on here. And then I've put LEDs into the speedo, but unfortunately they flicker quite a bit as the alternator is getting sucked out by the headlight. And I've also put LEDs in the back here, so they're quite bright, especially at night. You can see the reflection in the road signs with the retroreflectors. And then of course I put a sprocket on here, which is how I'm able to hit 100 kilometers an hour. And with this sprocket, this is a 38 tooth, I think. With this sprocket, it allows the engine to keep a lower RPM at higher speed. I think you can go a little bit lower, maybe like down to a 36, but you do run into issues where the chain gets really close to the swing arm here. So I'll probably run as largest sprocket on the front here. I currently have a 16 tooth, and I think 17 is the biggest you can go without running into problems with the case around the sprocket. If you get up to 18 tooth, I think you have to ground down a bit, and there's absolutely no clearance. If you're doing daily stuff and you don't want to do maintenance on it, 16 is probably the highest, because with 17 tooth you've got practically no clearance. Okay, I think that covers the updates on both the CT90 project and an update on the CT110. Accidentally took a picture there, which is why it just cut. Got those shiny wheels. Okay, until the next update, see you later.